Welcome to the first episode of Maxed Out, Breaking Down the Halls, a podcast about Maxton Hall, the world between us, with me, Lorena Coleman, where I'll be talking about my favorite show. I'm going to be breaking down each episode. I'm going to be discussing the characters and really anything and everything Maxton Hall related. And just please note that this podcast will contain spoilers. So when did this obsession begin? And yes, it is an obsession. I recall I kept seeing this clip where Ruby barges in and catches her teacher and another student, and that's really all I saw. I hadn't seen the trailer. I really wasn't too interested initially just from that little clip. I recall it came out on a Thursday. It was Thursday, May 9th, and then that Saturday morning, so 2 days later, I recall I had errands to run. It was raining. I didn't feel like leaving the house, and I said, all right, I'm going to just watch a few minutes of the show. Let me see how it goes. Oh my goodness. Several hours later, I was still on that couch. I never moved. This show is so good. It's so addictive. And I've seen a lot of shows similar to this, but nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to Maxton Hall. There's the chemistry between the two leads, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, they talk with their eyes. I feel everything that they're feeling just by the look in their eyes. When Ruby's crying, I'm crying. When James is crying, I'm crying. It's just so emotional, and I love it. I absolutely love it. There's also the amazing music. Every time that I hear Moth to a Flame, I immediately think of Maxton Hall, and I also think of that scene, and you all know what I'm talking about when I say that scene. So yeah, just my obsession began after binging that show. So the other thing I found out about the show is that it's actually a German show. I had no idea. I had seen it in English. After it finished, I went ahead and I did a little research, and that's when I found out that it was a German show. From there, I just kept researching and researching. It's won so many awards that I'd never even heard of, such as the Bambi Award, the Jupiter Award. Shortly after its release, Maxton Hall became the most popular series on Prime Video worldwide, and it ranked #1 in so many countries, and it's also been translated into numerous languages. Also, immediately upon the show's release, it was renewed for a second season, which is so exciting, although it's not going to come out until later this year. So within my research, I found out that it's actually based on a trilogy by German author Mona Kasten. So season 1, which aired in May of 2024, is based on the book called Save Me. There's 6 episodes that dropped at once, which made it very binge-worthy. And season 1 was actually filmed in the summer of 22, so a little fun fact there for you. Now, I tried to find the English version of these books. They did not exist. But I did find the online PDF English version and love them, but I don't really know how accurate they are. So later this year, actually coming around the corner here in July, the English version of Save Me, which is book 1, is going to come out. So eagerly awaiting that. And then Save You will come out in September. And then Save Us, now this is the English version book that I'm referring to, is going to come out in November. So really, really excited to read the official books. So let me tell you about episode 1. Episode 1 was directed by Martin Schreier, and it takes place at an elite high school known as Maxton Hall. And episode 1 is called Under the Radar. The opening scene, oh my goodness, I have to stop right there. The minute I saw the opening scene, I thought, who is that? And why have I never seen this actor before? So we're introduced to James Beaufort, and it's obvious that he's had a night of partying. He's lying in bed, and beside him, there's someone there, but he doesn't look very happy to see that person. And at the same time, his phone is ringing, and it shows on the screen that it's his sister, Lydia. And she's leaving a message. She says that she messed up, that the dad is going to be freaking out. So James gets up, he goes outside. There's the pool, and all of his friends are hanging out. So from there, Lydia, his twin sister, shows up at the pool, and she's crying, and she's telling him that Ruby Bell, she just barged in, and she's worried that there's going to be another scandal, that the dad's going to be upset. And James says to her, who is Ruby Bell? So after having seen this a few times, I kept going back to where he asks Lydia, who is Ruby Bell? Because I thought, You'll soon find out who she is, and you'll never be the same James Beaufort. So from there, the scene shifts over to Ruby. She's riding the bus. She's heading to school, and her teacher, Mr. Sutton, also gets on the bus, and she goes over to him, and she talks to him about the recommendation letter. So after that, she arrives at the school. The first thing I thought to myself was, oh my goodness, that school, it looks like a castle. And actually, that's because it is a castle. That's where they filmed it. We see all of her wealthy classmates. They've got their designer bags. And then the camera goes over to Ruby's backpack, which has fallen apart. It's all stitched up. And we see that everyone is wearing the school uniform. The colors are fuchsia, love that color, and blue. And at the same time, we hear Ruby's voiceover say how she worked really hard to qualify for a scholarship, that she's invisible to her classmates, and she's okay with that. Now, remember that she says that she's invisible. We're going to talk about that in future episodes, but just remember that. We also meet her BFF, Lynn, who is on the events committee with Ruby. And actually, Ruby is the chair of the events committee. And we find out that Lynn actually used to be like the wealthy students until her parents lost their job and they got divorced. So I'm going to just jump ahead a little bit. So now Ruby goes over to see her teacher because she forgot something. And she basically barges in on Mr. Sutton and Lydia. So now we know why Lydia showed up crying at the pool. So Ruby, she runs off. And from there, I'm going to jump ahead once again. We see James. He's arriving. He's arriving to school. Oh my goodness, I have to stop right here. So he's being driven by Percy. I love that man. I'm going to talk about him later in future episodes. But he's being driven by his chauffeur in a Rolls Royce. He gets out of the car. He's got like all attitude. He tells Percy he'll be right back. He walks into the school, into the events committee, and he wants to talk to Ruby. And he says, can I borrow your friend for a minute? So everyone's kind of like looking, what is going on? Why is James Beaufort here coming to talk to Ruby Bell? So they go off to another room. And the first thing that James says is, Robin, right? First of all, her name is Ruby, and she corrects him. And he goes, I knew it was something with an R. How awful is that? I knew it was something with an R. Oh, hated it when he said that. So then he says, you know who I am, right? Once again, he's just so arrogant. I hate how he's acting. He's basically there to bribe her. He wants to offer her money to keep quiet about what she saw between his sister and the teacher. And Ruby's not interested in the money. She basically throws the money in his face. And when she did that, I loved it. I loved how Ruby threw the money in his face. But James says, I know that you can use the money for a new backpack. That's awful. He's just mean. So from there, the next scene is Ruby working at a cafe. She's a waitress. And then she heads home. And this is where we meet her family, the Bell family. I love the Bells. So there's her sister Ember, who's into fashion. Then there's her dad Angus, who's in a wheelchair. And then there's her mom Helen. It's obvious that this is a very loving and happy family. They cook together. They're eating together. They're talking about books that they're reading. So very, very loving and supportive family. But we also find out that Ruby has been saving her money to buy the dad a new stair lift. It broke early on when he got it, and he's been sleeping downstairs on the couch. And we actually see the mom helping the dad get ready for bed. And it was just so sad seeing that. And at the same time, we see Ruby, who's up in her room and she's staring at the poster of Oxford. So we're starting to learn that she's really focused on Oxford. So the following day, Ruby goes to see Mr. Sutton and tells him that she no longer wants that recommendation letter. And after that, as she's walking down the halls, we see that James, he just pulls her into a room and he tries to bribe her again. And actually, this time, he doesn't just bribe her with money. He actually offers himself. I think the reason why he tried to offer himself is because he does say to Ruby, everyone has a price. What's your price? And she doesn't say anything initially. She's basically just looking at him. And I think that's why he then decides to offer himself to her, because maybe he thought that that's what she was looking for, when in fact she wasn't. She tells him that she wants him to stay away from her, that she never wants to be seen with him again. And James is absolutely shocked that she's saying all of this. And then she runs off. So now the next scene is the locker room, and everyone is getting ready for the lacrosse game. And James goes over to Alistair and tells him not to get revenge on McCormick, who apparently at the last game tried to break Kesh's neck. So Kesh is actually Alistair's love interest. And there was something that I noticed too. The coach goes over to James and puts his arm around his shoulders and says something about how James has led the team the last couple of years. The camera turns over to another teammate who we later find out is Cyril. And I thought, why does he have that look on his face? He doesn't say anything. This is Cyril. He doesn't say anything, but there's just something about the look that he makes when the coach is praising James. So from there, we're at the lacrosse game and Alistair doesn't listen to James and he actually goes and whacks McCormick. Now this results in Alistair being sidelined. So when he's over on the sidelines, he sees Ruby Bell. I initially thought, oh no, he's going to be just like James and say something awful to her. But actually, he extends his hand out to Ruby and he introduces himself. So I was really happy about that. And James is on the field. He's watching this and he actually gets whacked himself because he's not paying attention about where he's going because he sees the interaction between Alistair and Ruby. And he's wondering what is going on over there. Like, what are they talking about? He's wondering if Ruby is saying something about his sister and the teacher. So from here, Ruby goes over to the headmaster because she wants to ask him for a recommendation letter. And the headmaster says that he will only give her a recommendation letter if the welcome party goes well. So from there, Ruby walks off happy. The team has won. So everyone's happy until Ruby bumps into James. And I mean, like, she actually whacks into his chest because she was walking backwards and turns around and bumps into him. And James has the meanest look on his face. James is so rude to her. He calls her a nobody, tells her that she has no connections, no money. I mean, he's just awful to her. And then he gets carried away by his teammates. And then suddenly it starts to rain and Ruby looks up. She looks really sad, really depressed. There's a scene where it looks like someone is falling into water. It looks like someone might be drowning. So when I first saw that, I thought, what's that about? Why are they going to that clip? So from there, we see James and his sister getting driven home to their mansion by Percy. So before they walk into their house, I noticed that Lydia and James, they give each other this look. They're not smiling, so I don't know what that means. But as soon as they walk into the house, it's a whole other story. You see the mom, she's all decked out. You see the dad, they're all like fancy looking. They just don't look real to me. I mean, who comes home to their parents dressed like that? So the first thing we also notice is the maid, and she's helping her take off her school jacket. And then the mom gives Lydia a kiss, and we see that the dad is giving James a pat on the back. So from the viewer perspective, everything is happy, just like the Bell family. Everything is good, happy family. And then at the same time, we see that Ruby is heading home on the bus to Gormsey. So I'm going to shift over to the next scene. So now it's the night of the party, and Mr. Sutton goes over to Ruby and he says, "Can I have a word with you?" He's basically trying to explain what she saw, and Ruby says it's, none of my business. But at the same time, the camera goes over to the stairs where we see James and his friends, and they're up to no good. It turns out that they've hired strippers to crash the party. Oh, so going back to the stairs, there was something else too that I noticed. So as Ruby is talking to Mr. Sutton, James pulls out his phone and he starts taking photos of the two of them. And I thought, oh my goodness, what is he going to do with those photos? But also I noticed that the camera goes over to his teammate Cyril, and he has this look on his face when James is taking the photos. And I thought, is there some history between Ruby and him? Did something happen? So I didn't know what to think of that when they showed Cyril looking at James taking the photo. So the strippers are crashing the party, and the headmaster wants to see James and Ruby in his office. And he tells Ruby that she's not going to get that recommendation letter. And he also tells James that he's been suspended from the lacrosse team. So now no one's happy. And also, too, the headmaster tells James that he has to be part of the events committee. He needs to help out. So Ruby's not happy. James is not happy. No one is happy. And in the next scene, we see James tell Ruby that he won't let her order him around. And she tells him that she's not afraid of him and that she won't let him ruin her chances of getting into Oxford. And she walks off. And then we hear James say, "You want a war, Ruby Bell? You got it." And that's how the first episode ends. So my initial reaction of James was not good. I thought he was a bully, mean, arrogant. He was so intimidating. He kept calling her Robin. So definitely did not like James. But on the other hand, I really liked Ruby. I liked how she stood up to James. She seems driven, focused. Her goal is to get into Oxford. So I really liked her. Plus, she's saving her money to buy that stair lift. And also, she's not going to let anyone get in her way, especially not James Beaufort, the heir to the family fortune. So at this point, I'm totally hooked, and the rest is history, and my passion for the show was born. And I want to shift over to the two leads. I want to talk about them. So James Beaufort is played by German actor Damien Harding, and he spent the last few years studying medicine while also starring in numerous shows. He's a climate change activist. He speaks multiple languages, and he's been acting for a while now. So once I heard that, I definitely had to try to go and see his previous work. Although a lot of it I couldn't access in my area, but what I could access, I definitely watched. And then Ruby Bell, she's played by German actress Harriet Herbig-Matten, who has also been acting from a young age. So also, once I heard that, I had to go and try to find her past shows. So really, really like these two leads. They just had amazing chemistry. As I said earlier, they talk with their eyes. I mean, their chemistry is off the charts. I had also read that the audition process was a secret, so the cast, they weren't aware of what they were auditioning for, meaning they didn't know that it was based on Mona Caston's books. So when Damien showed up in character, Harriet thought that he was arrogant because he showed up looking the part for the role. So the other thing, too, I want to talk about is a couple of other characters that we're introduced to or that we also see. There's Kieran. He's on the events committee. And it's so obvious that he has a crush on Ruby. He's actually staring at her a couple of times. And when James shows up looking for Ruby that first time when he wants to talk to her, and he says, "Can I talk to your friend?" It's Kieran who's shaking his head like, no. And he has this funny look, maybe like protective of Ruby. I'm not sure, but I really liked him. And also, it's Kieran who saves Ruby from the lap dance when the strippers show up. So not having seen the trailer or knowing anything the first time I watched this, I thought, is he going to be her love interest? What's going to happen between these two? Because remember, I didn't know anything about the show. And then the other person I want to talk about is the girl who we see lying in bed in the opening scene. So we find out that that's Alistair's sister. And during the lacrosse game, the camera keeps going to her over and over. So once again, as I said, not having seen the trailer and knowing anything about the show, I kept thinking, is that going to be his love interest? So another thing that I want to talk about are a couple of observations that I made. I noticed that when they're in the headmaster's office, Ruby has a chance to call out James, but she doesn't. She doesn't say anything because the headmaster says, "Is there anything else that you want to tell me?" And I thought for sure she'd be spilling the beans, but she actually doesn't say anything. And it also surprises James because you can see the look that he has. He's also shocked that she didn't say anything. So that was just an observation that I made. Another observation that I made was just the differences between the two families. From the outside, yeah, everything looks good at that mansion, but it just didn't seem real to me. Yet at the same time, when we see the Bell family, I mean, that looked like everyday life. Like that looked like your average family. So that's a wrap up the first episode, not only of Maxton Hall, but of this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I know that Maxton Hall is loved worldwide, and I'd like you to join me each week. I'll be dropping weekly episodes, and if you saw that first episode of Maxton Hall, tell me what you thought. Is there a scene that stood out? What did you think of the characters? I'd love to hear your feedback. So if you do have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you, so you can reach me at maxedoutHallpodcast@gmail.com.